What's up, everybody? It's Jim from Straight Blast Pythons, and welcome to the channel. Today, we're going to talk about a gene that, for some odd reason, everyone's trying to breed out of their collections, and that's the pastel. Before we get started, this is not going to be a breakdown of the Morph. I'm not sitting here describing what it is, showing you combos, what you can do with it. That's not the point of this video. This video is just here to have a conversation about where the Morph is in the industry, look at what people are saying about it, what people think about it, in this case, why people are trying to get it out of their collections, and really see, is that justified? If all that comes with this is just us exchanging some comments down below, great. If it sparks an even bigger conversation outside of that, even better. All right, so we got Geisha joining us today. She is a super pastel. She is het for clown. I apologize, I didn't have a single gene pastel to have here on display with us. I do have a couple up in my quarantine racks, but for biosecurity purposes, I'm not going to bring them down here, and I'm not bringing my filming equipment up there. They're on the other side of the house. They can stay there. Pastel is one of the most common genes out there. I'm sure you all know what it looks like by now. So as of the point of filming this, early January 2023, there's 48,890 ball pythons on Morph Market right now. Of that number, 14,641 of them are either pastel or super pastel combinations. That means 29% of all ball pythons on the market right now contain the pastel gene. So that brings the question, why is there such a recent aversion to the gene? Why are so many people saying they're trying to breed it out of their collection, or they're just trying to avoid it entirely when they're purchasing new animals? I mean, the answer to that is pretty straightforward. Most people complain that pastel browns out, and to an extent that's true. All ball pythons do have an extent of browning out, but look at Geisha here. She's 1,900 grams, 3 years old. Granted, she's a super, but I mean, do you really see much browning here? I don't. Now, I personally think most of that complaint comes from people in the clown project, because pastel does have a tendency of browning a little bit more than the typical ball python, and clowns also do have a tendency of browning. So when you combine two genes that want to brown, obviously you're going to get an animal that darkens up as it ages. But let's be honest, these aren't the only two genes that brown. Pastel is not the only gene that has a major color change throughout its life, so I don't understand why pastel is singled out the way it is, outside of the fact that, well, it's common. If nothing else, pastel emphasizes the importance of keeping quality breeders, selecting quality animals. You know that saying that keeps going around the industry, quality in, quality out? Pastel is a perfect example of that saying. I think a large problem with pastel goes back to the number of them that there are. So again, that goes back to the quality standpoint. Pastel, with over 29% of the ball pythons on the market having some form of it in there, you're going to get more bad examples than you will a morph that only has, say, I don't know, 400 or 500 snakes on the market. What was it, almost 15,000 ball pythons? You're going to have at least half of those be below average. I mean, just statistically. Now, if you actually go ahead and select good examples of the genes, when you breed it, you're not going to have the issues associated with it. A good quality pastel breeder is going to create good quality pastel offspring that are not going to brown out. Geisha here is a perfect example of that. Both lines of pastel that are in her, obviously her being super pastel, are very bright with minimal browning. I'm going to go ahead and put her away because she's trying to choke me out right now. Alright, so we just put Geisha away, but let me introduce you to Striker. Striker is a pastel yellow-bellied genetic stripe, and yes, he has yellow belly in him, so that is going to help the coloration to some extent, but he is a single gene pastel. He's not a super. And again, look at that coloration. A little bit of browning, but very, very minimal. Another prime example of that quality in, quality out. What are you doing, dude? This just brings up the argument, though, that there are other genes. Yellow belly, for example. Fire is another good one that you can mix in with the pastel and eliminate all the issues, both of which very common genes. He's not wanting to sit still like Geisha was, so I'm going to put him back right away, and I'm going to get you an example of a not-so-good pastel. So this guy right here has yet to be named. He is also pastel yellow belly, just like Striker was. He also has calico in him. But looking at him, you can see how dark he is. He is pastel yellow belly just the same, but that brightness just is not there. Now, we picked him up obviously for the calico. I'm not going to hold back anything that he produces with the pastel in it, but I'm going to try to get the calico into the collection and go from there. But he's just an example of a lower quality pastel. And this is why I think a lot of people complain about it, because they do darken out. again goes back to that argument of choose your breeders wisely. Good quality pastel will create good quality pastel. And that's true for any other gene, not just this one. Again, the brownout, the bad quality pastel is obviously the issue. I'm not going to beat a dead horse on that. Most of the complaints, I think, come from the clown and the xanthic combos because they both exhibit the brownout. Honestly, in my opinion, outside of the elimination of the yellow on the sides of the belly, they're not that much different than the normal pastel once they age if you have a bad quality pastel in the xanthic. And with the clowns, obviously they brown out. You don't see it as much in a baby. I could show you a baby pastel clown, but it's not going to show the example of what they are as an adult. I'm going to say go ahead and take a look at that if you want to see what I'm talking about. But there are a lot of genes, Krypton, for those that are in the Clown Project. Obviously, the genetic stripe, the bright, the G-stripe Clown Project, that the pastel doesn't suffer the same brownout as bad. And to be completely honest, they maintain their colors better, and they're great in those animals. So would I be wrong to think that the only reason that the industry is making a big movement against pastel is because of the way it interacts in clown, and to some extent the xanthics? I mean, clown is huge, so I believe it, but why would we push a gene out completely due to its interaction with just one recessive? Ultimately, is the pastel gene actually a problem, or is it just people breeding poor examples of pastel that's really the problem? Personally, my money is on the latter. I've got those two examples of really good pastel that I showed you. We had another one that I recently sold. I got a few bad examples of pastel that we picked up as part of a collection sitting up in my quarantine rack upstairs as well. We won't be keeping them, but I'll sell those off as pets or something along those lines. I don't think the gene's a problem. I don't think the browning's a problem. I think it's breeders making poor selections in their breeding stock. What do you think? Please comment below. Message me directly if you want, either on here or on Instagram. Let's talk about this. What do you think about pastel? Do you think I'm wrong? I mean, honestly, feel free to tell me. I'm new to this. I'm only, second season, 2 years in? I'm a nobody. My opinion might be completely out there. So let's have a conversation about this. I mean, what can it hurt, right? I'll see you next time.